Johnson. It's SportsCenter All Night on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app. I'm Steve Lennox. Time now for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. Talk this week about the Carolina Panthers home game at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte Sunday against Minnesota being moved because of protests in the city. Pete Sousa, news anchor of KNOE TV8 in Louisiana, joining us here on Scan on SportsCenter All Night. Pete has lived and worked in the Charlotte, North Carolina market in the past. Pete, were you surprised that the NFL kept the Panthers game in Charlotte for Sunday?
No, not necessarily, because that's an NFL move, right? I mean, it's rare. You look at when they move a game, you're talking about an act of God a lot of times, or a natural disaster like Hurricane Katrina, or, I remember in Philadelphia a game being moved from, let's say, a Monday or a Sunday to a Tuesday because of a snowstorm. I've never really seen it because of a threat of protest. So for me, it's kind of like, although we are entering territory where things now have become sort of unprecedented. So this would have been a precedent-setting event, I think, if they had moved it.
Pete, whether it's in Charlotte with Cam Newton, the quarterback of the Panthers, or any other athlete, including Colin Kaepernick of the San Francisco 49ers, you're former PR coordinator with the Bobcats organization, former sideline reporter as well. Are players prepared to answer questions about social issues on a day-in, day-out basis going forward? And are professional sports teams, in your view, ready to take that on as well with the members of their organization?
I think they are, because I think the players that will have an opinion and the players that will speak will be the guys that want to speak. And knowing the media, if you see, after every game, they're all around Colin Kaepernick's locker, because he has something to say. In Carolina, they're not at Fozzie Whitaker's locker. They're at Cam Newton's locker because he has something to say. He wants to talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, they won't approach you to talk about it. Therefore, the guys that are going to talk about it, it's going to be a wheelhouse issue for them, and they're going to be comfortable talking about it. Now, you will get a reporter that will just kind of bum rush a player from time to time, let's say at a community event or in the locker room post-game, and ask him a social question just to get a reaction from an athlete. But, that's rare. More often than not, the guys who want to talk about it are going to be the guys that the media gravitates toward. So I think, these guys are prepared because we are in a climate now, more and more as we're seeing. Something is going on and something needs to change. I cannot remember in my lifetime, approaching 40 years old, where guys have been this political, guys being athletes, and women too, when you look at Rapinoe. So I think there's a lot going on here, and I think the guys that are talking are prepared to talk because it's coming from the heart. It's something they've thought about.
Pete, we can see sports as a distraction, whether it's on the weekend with college football and NFL on Sunday. But as Panthers coach Ron Rivera said this week, he believes playing the game at home for the Panthers Sunday is good for the city. Can sports, in your view, bring a community together when something like this is occurring in their environment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm sitting here. I'm in northeast Louisiana, but not far from New Orleans. When you think about what happened with Hurricane Katrina, 13 months later, they played their first game. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of that against the Atlanta Falcons. You relive it. Steve Gleason blocks that punt on that Monday night. And a little-known fact, Mike Tirico, Tony Kornheiser, and Joe Theismann are calling the game Monday night. They didn't talk for 1 minute after that because of how loud it was in the Superdome, and also because they didn't want to mess with that feeling, that natural aura of what was going on. And I think that's an example of, sports can heal. The games had to go on after 9/11, as did events like Saturday Night Live. I think these outlets can help us out. I really believe that tomorrow's game, though, honestly, isn't a situation. I respect Ron Rivera, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there could be an air of chaos outside. I think that there's a feeling of, it's kind of what side are you coming down on with this? A lot of people have certain opinions on it. It's not necessarily like, hey, we just endured an attack at the hands of terrorists, or, hey, we just endured a natural disaster. We're bouncing back from it. This is a little different. It's political, so I don't know that you can compare the two.
Pete, you mentioned athletes nowadays being sort of conditioned to handle these types of things and talking about political issues. That's something Michael Jordan, team owner of the Charlotte Hornets, didn't really do during his playing career. He's now out there. Do you think he carries the same clout as a Kaepernick, as a LeBron James, guys who are playing right now, present day?
I think it's a little different because I think as guys evolve, I think that there's an air of respect. People now, once Michael Jordan, you talked about the HB2 thing, when it was starting to look like, Charlotte was going to lose the All-Star game. In April, he came out and he said, hey, we embrace diversity here. in Charlotte, under this umbrella that is the Hornets organization. And then, of course, the game got pulled in July, and he went ahead and he said, hey, we understand, and this is a guy back, I think the famous quote was, he said, Republicans buy Nikes too, and he never wanted to take a stance politically. I think that players maybe have a little bit more juice than somebody, say, like a Michael Jordan. That's just the way it is. They're more in the public eye, and I don't think that I think that younger people are more attracted to the athletes on the field. Therefore, they can become lightning rods, as opposed to ownership groups who don't really have the contact with the younger people. Now, Michael Jordan isn't a separate category, and it's been really interesting to see him transition, even as an owner. Now he's in a place where he really is comfortable in his ownership role. He really is comfortable in his role now in management, and he doesn't hesitate to make statements like this, which were so foreign to him in the past.
Pete Sousa, outstanding stuff. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes with us, Pete.
Absolutely, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Pete Sousa, news anchor, KNOE TV8 in Louisiana, joining us on SportsCenter all night. Protests expected to continue Sunday in Charlotte. Saturday, groups of players at many college football games around the country demonstrating while the national anthem played in hopes of raising awareness about social justice issues in our country. We mentioned Michigan players raising their fists in protest. Saturday, Michigan football player Jordan Lewis told reporters he meant no disrespect to the country, but he felt a message needed to be delivered. He said he wanted to let the public know that there is injustice in America, and he believes people of all races need to come together to search for a solution. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable networks. Coming up, World Cup of Hockey Saturday night in Toronto. Canada and Russia playing for an opportunity to go to the finals. It's ESPN Radio.
Can the Seahawks halt their skid when they face the 49ers in Seattle tomorrow? Hear the game on ESPN Radio and get reaction to this and all the games on a Football Monday on Mike and Mike, starting at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.